Welcome to the Constitution Show, brought to you by the American Constitutional Rights Union, dedicated to defending the constitutional rights of all Americans. We're here to get into the ins and outs of our National Owner's Manual. You know, owning a country is a serious responsibility, so it's up to all of us to kind of understand how this thing is designed to work. Here to dive in today in a fun and practical way, I am Tom McHale, here with my co-host and producer, Joe Armacost.
Hey,
Joe?
Tom, I'm doing well. And hey, you're looking dapper today. And I got to tell you, you've been working on your camera technique and you are looking right where you're supposed to be looking today.
Well, I'm wearing a shirt and, well,
It's a good thing, Tom.
yeah, so it's a start, right?
Yeah, good to be with you, man. Glad to
Good.
be. Tom.
Hey, you know what I thought about after our last show would be a good idea to talk about today is the framework of the founding documents. Kind of these things all work together. So I think we can spend just a couple of minutes and easily explain how these things complement each other. Sound
All right.
good?
Yeah, man. Sounds good. Take her away.
Okay, so I think there's a real simple way to kind of understand the unique role and purpose of each of our founding documents. And by founding documents, I mean the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. So they weren't developed together as this bundled package or planned book set, but they do fulfill unique and complementary roles. So simply put, when you put these three things together, they provide the complete package, you know, the why, the how, and then finally the checks and balances. So I like to use a simple analogy for this. It's kind of like building a house. You know, think of three main components of the house. The first thing is kind of the artist rendering or your dream. You know, what's this thing going to look like? What's the yard and the neighborhood and the ideal, so to speak, right? So
Right.
that's the Declaration of Independence. You know, what should this be when all is said and done? The next part in that, you know, if you're looking ahead to kind of make that happen, is the Constitution, and that I like to make analogous to a set of blueprints for a house. You know, it's completed a little bit further into the process, and it takes that early vision of how it should be and lays out the instructions on precisely how to build that house.
Okay.
Last, but certainly not least, is the Bill of Rights and the later amendments after that. You know, they're kind of like the building code. They don't design your house, but they do serve as kind of a check and balance to make sure the plans and the construction process don't stray into dangerous territory.
Well, we're going to
So,
check on the cost of all this stuff later, aren't we, Tom?
we know the cost.
Yes, we do.
The cost is infinite, as you can tell by our national budget, right? So, so you know what? Speaking of costs, let's go back to the Declaration of Independence. Let's kind of drill down into each of those three things a little bit more. So, you know, again, I like to think of the Declaration of Independence as the big idea that describes how things ought to be in a perfect world. So think of this, and it is a series of valid complaints about what was wrong with our current system of government under King George. You know, it goes in and it describes at a high level the concepts of freedom, and then it goes in and provides an itemized list to the king about everything that's wrong with the current form of colonial rule. So, but that's about where it stops. It does conclude with the outright fix for those complaints being revolution, but it does not stray into the how-to. You know, what are the exactly how is that going to work, and how are things going to look at the end of that process? But guess what? That's covered by part two, the Constitution. So, you know, back to the blueprints for our form of government. You know, that's the one that really lays out the structure of the new country, but it doesn't get into the myriad of details, like whether you can park for free after 6 p.m. or on weekends, right?
Right.
Those are laws. You know, the Constitution is really more of a framework that defines the system of how we will make small and big decisions like that. So just like blueprints in the house don't necessarily specify where the furniture is going to go or whether you're going to have a 72 or 85-inch TV set, you know, the Constitution kind of provides the same thing. Where are the rooms going to be, and how big are they, and what's the process look like for building those things? So, make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me.
Now, part three is, well, where things get a little ugly, I think. I like to think of the Bill of Rights as kind of the building code, or maybe, on a bad day, the neighborhood association. It's the check and balance against possible misinterpretation of the Constitution. So, it's kind of similar to the building code in our house example, in how it prevents shady builders from implementing shortcuts and violating the intent of the building plans, right? So the interesting thing is the people who drafted the Constitution felt that it was blindingly obvious that people should hold all the power, and the government. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but the government should be minimally intrusive. While others, some more forward-thinking folks that turned out to be right, I think, were worried about government power mongers, spiraling out of control over time and assuming more power than was originally intended for them to have. Sound familiar?
It's amazing to me that more people don't realize that it's a government limiting document.
Yeah.
It's to slow the government down, get them to back. It's not about giving the government more power. And now I've always been taught that, and I remembered that, and it makes sense to me. But a lot of people don't seem to get it that way.
Well, and you know what? You can call them negative liberties, is what's presented by the Bill of Rights. It's actually a list of things the government cannot do, just like you said. So, consider the First Amendment. The First Amendment doesn't grant the right to free speech. None of this grants anything. Those are pre-existing rights. What it does is said the government cannot trample on your pre-existing right to free speech. And that is a big, big, big difference. So same thing, look at expression of religion. It doesn't grant freedom of religion. It says government can't establish its own religion that tramples on your religious freedom. So in summary, I think if you kind of step back and look at these three founding documents, the three legs of the stool, as as the process of building a house, the vision, the grand vision, the blueprints as to how you're going to build it, and then the building code or neighborhood association that says, hey, be careful, you can't do this, or the other thing. That's kind of how it boils down. So there we have it, short and sweet. So wow. Thank you for joining us on the Constitution Show today. Remember, we're in charge of this country, and while it doesn't seem like it at times, we're in charge of its government as well. It's up to us to understand how to run this thing and take an active part in its maintenance. So until next time, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and share it with your friends and family. Got something to say? Drop us a line at theconstitutionshow@theacru.org. Thank you.